All right, let's talk about something you've probably never seen, but that makes your entire world work. We're surrounded by these tiny, invisible heroes, but today we're focusing on one that is an absolute powerhouse. This little bead, it's part of a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it is the secret ingredient that makes so much of our modern life possible, just working silently in the background.
So think about this for a second. What on earth do these three things have in common? I mean, on the surface, not a lot, right? You've got your morning coffee, a life-saving medicine, and the phone or computer you're watching this on. But the secret to making all of them work, and work perfectly, is exactly the same thing. Incredibly, mind-bogglingly pure water. And the key to getting that pure water? It's this tiny bead.
And we're not talking about simple filtering, like straining pasta. Oh no, this is way, way smarter than that. The process is called Ion Exchange, but a much better way to think of it is like the world's most exclusive, most efficient chemical swap meet, all happening on a microscopic level.
Now, to really get why we need this swap meet, we first have to talk about the problem with water itself. When we think of water, we just think H2O. But you know what? In the real world, the water that comes out of our taps or flows in a river is never just H2O. It's actually more like a complex soup, just full of dissolved salts and minerals.
And swimming around in that soup are what we can call troublemaker ions. The two big ones are calcium and magnesium. They're the reason you get that crusty white buildup in your kettle. That's what we call hard water. And yeah, that's annoying for your coffee machine, but for something like making a computer chip, it's a complete and utter disaster.
So how do we get rid of these troublemakers? Well, this brings us to a really brilliant analogy for how these little resin beads work. I want you to imagine that each tiny bead is an exclusive magnetic nightclub, and it has a very, very specific guest list. At its core, ion exchange is really just a reversible chemical reaction. It's a trade. See, the resin bead comes preloaded with harmless ions it's totally willing to give away. So when water flows past, the bead sees those troublemaker ions, which it wants way more, and it makes a swap.
Okay, so let's break down how this magnetic nightclub really works. The bead, our nightclub, is filled with security guard ions, like sodium, just kind of hanging out. Now, when a troublemaker ion like calcium shows up and tries to get in, the resin bead has a much stronger magnetic pull to it. So it literally kicks out a harmless sodium ion to make room, grabs that troublemaker, and holds on tight. The result? The bad stuff is trapped inside the resin, and the water that flows out is way, way pure.
But here's the thing, it's not quite as simple as having just one type of nightclub. You can't just use any old resin bead for every single job. They are not all created equal. Different purification jobs need different specialists, and picking the right one is absolutely critical.
We can basically group these resins into 4 power classes, almost like you're picking a character for a team. First up, you've got the sac resin, the workhorse. This one does all the heavy lifting of standard water softening, just grabbing that calcium and magnesium all day long. Then you have the WAC, the surgeon, which is for more precise, delicate jobs, like efficiently targeting alkalinity. For the really nasty stuff, you need the SBA, our ghostbuster, because it goes after sneaky contaminants like silica that other resins just can't see. And finally, the WBA acts as the support, helping out by neutralizing strong acids.
And it's not just about their chemical job either. Their physical structure really matters too. You've got these smooth, high-capacity gel types, which can hold a ton of ions. But if your water has a lot of, organic gunk in it, you're going to need the tougher, sponge-like macroporous beads that can handle all that without getting clogged up.
So this brings up a really crucial question. What happens when the nightclub gets full? When every single spot inside that resin bead is taken up by a troublemaker ion it's captured. Do you just throw them all away?
Oh, absolutely not. That would be so incredibly wasteful. When a resin is full, or as the engineers call it, exhausted, it's not dead. It just needs to be recharged. And this whole process is called regeneration, and it basically resets the bead so it can get right back to work.
Regeneration is pretty much a forceful eviction. You wash the beads with a really powerful chemical solution. For the cation resins, the ones that grab the positive ions, you give them a strong acid bath. For the anion resins, you use a caustic solution. This massive flood of new ions forces all those captured troublemakers out, flushing them away and leaving the bead fresh and ready to go again.
So at the end of the day, a good resin just has to be tough enough to do this over and over and over again. The 3 key qualities are a high exchange capacity, so it can grab a lot of ions,
physical stability so it doesn't just get crushed by water pressure, and of course, chemical resistance so it can survive all those intense acid and caustic baths.
So why do we go to all this trouble? Well, because this process of purification is, and this is no exaggeration, what powers our modern world. From the most advanced laboratories to everyday products, ultra-pure water is a completely non-negotiable ingredient.
This number right here, this is like the final boss of water purity, 18.2 megaohms centimeter. That's a measure of electrical resistivity. See, the fewer ions there are in the water, the less electricity it can conduct. And at this level, there is basically nothing left in the water but pure H2O.
And this really shows you just how unnatural this water is. It is so pure, so completely empty of the minerals it would normally carry, that it actually becomes chemically aggressive. It's hungry, and it will actively try to pull ions from anything it touches, even the plastic or glass container it's in.
And this level of purity is exactly why this all matters so much. In the pharmaceutical industry, for instance, you simply cannot have a random calcium ion contaminating a batch of medicine. The water used for anything, as a solvent, for cleaning, it has to be absolutely unequivocally pure to make sure the final product is both safe and effective.
But, as powerful as Ion Exchange is, it's not some magic bullet. It's not a perfect solution. It has some very real-world limitations that engineers have to constantly work around. There are 3 main deal breakers you have to watch out for. First is something called fouling. That's when big organic molecules basically smother the beads and stop them from working. Second, you have to pre-treat the water. You can't just dump dirty pond water into the system. It'll clog up instantly. And finally, there's the waste. That regeneration process creates a really salty brine, and you have to manage and treat that responsibly.
But even with all those challenges, the applications are just staggering. This invisible hero is a key player in producing everything from green hydrogen and nuclear power, all the way to the sweeteners in your favorite soda. It's truly one of the most important industrial processes you've probably never even heard of.
So the hero of our story is invisible, right? Working away on a microscopic level. But now that you know its secret, this constant, frantic swap meet happening all around us, the real question is, where else in your daily life do you think it might be hiding in plain sight?